Reconciliation Rising is funded in part by the Carnegie Corporation of New York and brought to you by Kevin Aberesk, Margaret Jacobs, Gabby Mace, and Dalen Zagurski. Judge Abby Abinanti of the Yurok Nation became the first female Native American lawyer in California and the first Native American to serve as a judicial officer for the state of California. In 1997, Judge Abby began serving as a judge for the Yurok Nation, and since 2007 has been the Yurok Tribal Court's chief judge. Judge Abby has established an innovative wellness court that focuses on restorative justice and healing.
We sure appreciate your time, Judge. Thank you so much for being willing to talk to us for our podcast. We wanted to start maybe by just having you introduce yourself, and we can ask some questions from there. So again, thank you.
Okay. Nek now Judge Abby, Rekoy Ak, Ayukui. What I said was, my name is Judge Abby. Hello, and I live on Requa.
All right. So maybe we can just have you start by describing how you grew up and what sort of values were instilled in you at a young age. Maybe start there.
I grew up in Humboldt County, right outside Arcata. There was a lot of difficulty. It was during a time when people were still pretty nasty toward us, and it was difficult for my mom. She had grown up there, and she had a very hard time. I don't know. It's hard to say how you come in and then how you're influenced by the things that happen. And I think at some point you have to make a choice about who you're going to be and how you're going to proceed. And clearly I got demonstrated a lot of ways I didn't want to be. And that helped me figure out different ways to be than how I was treated, I guess is the best way to say it. But then there were individual acts of kindness that really helped me, and who made a point of trying to reach out to me because they could see that I was being mistreated, so that made a big impression on me.
So I noticed, Judge Abby, that you went to Humboldt State University,
Mm-hmm.
and you were a journalism major, as Kevin was as well. But I know you eventually went to law school. And what made you decide to switch from journalism to law?
I was invited to go to coffee with these three older women in the community, and not having my wits about me, I went with them. And the whole purpose of the coffee meeting was that they were saying, "Don't you think it'd be nice to go to law school?" To which I replied, "No, I'd never wanted to go to law school. Why would I do that?" And as the conversation progressed, they finally said, "Well, there's a scholarship for Native Americans to go to law school, and you're the only one graduating, so you're going." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." I lost the argument. So the lesson in that is do not argue with old Indian women.
Yeah, I hear you. I sure do.
Just in case you're ever inclined to do so, turn and run.
Yeah.
You have a better chance that way.
Do you regret going to law school?
No, I see their point. I mean, they were like, we need that more than we need you to be a journalist, and I've done okay at it. I'm not brilliant, but I'm hardworking, and it's been okay.
Were you originally drawn to federal Indian law? You thought you might do that?
No, I mean, I always intended to go home, which I did. So it wasn't. I worked in legal services. I worked in small private practice. I worked for tribes. I never had much of a wide idea of what I was going to do. I was just going to go home and try to help and do what I could.
Well, if you wouldn't mind maybe starting to describe your legal career and where you started out and how you got to where you're at today.
All right, I was in California in legal services for a while, and then I got a fellowship to go into private practice, and I did a lot of work I'm probably the only one standing that did dependency both before the Indian Child Welfare Act and after. Um, and so I was in court a lot. I was a courtroom lawyer in small counties for the most part. Uh, and then I expanded into San Francisco, into urban areas, and I represented a number of tribes. And then eventually I came to the attention of um, people in San Francisco because I was working here, and I got offered the commissionership, and I took that because I needed to stop traveling. So, as much as I was.
What was the commissionership? Do you mind explaining that?
It was, it's an entry-level judge, and they're appointed by the bench. And my assignment was in family law, and family law in San Francisco included family law, dependency, and delinquency. And I spent the majority of my time in dependency and or delinquency in San Francisco. And I went back to the tribe, and we had just been recognized in '93, so we were just getting ready to set up the infrastructure for our judicial system, and I was very interested in doing that and making sure we did not repeat the errors of the state and federal system. So I was pretty drawn to that, and that's where I've been ever since. I mean, I do certain other things, but not a lot.
So, Judge Abby, would you mind expanding on what you mean by the errors of the state and system that you were part of in regard to family law?
I think the best way to describe it really is that those systems are rights-based. That's their culture. Our culture is responsibility-based. So then the principles that evolve from those two differences are very different. And I think for us, the responsibility-based principles work better. And so that's where we've gone. We're not into you have a right to this or a right to that. We're into what is your responsibility in this situation? And how do you exercise that responsibility? And humans are given to errors. And so once you err, how can you fix that? How can you address it? How can you reassume your rightful place in community? Because there's a lot of things to do. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, that means it's not getting done.
If you wouldn't mind, maybe you could describe kind of what typical or what sort of legal challenges or legal issues, I guess, affect the Yurok tribe that you've had to address since joining the court.
What we're doing is we're looking at community, and we're trying to be a member of those people who need us, extended family. If they've made a mistake, how are they going to fix it? If they need help, we have very large dockets in wellness courts for veterans, youth, families, adults. And we spend a lot of time on those people or not on those people, with those people, trying to help them walk back into a way of life that's responsibility based. And how are you going to meet that? What happens? How did you get here? We devised the only state certified program for batterer intervention. And it's been very, very successful. Because we expend a lot of time working on the culture, working on how did you get to what you're doing, and is that really okay with you? And how do you walk your way back from that? And so some of the first things that we do is this behavior was never something we had in community before the invasion. So you need to talk to the elders in your family and figure out how it got there and how you learned it. And essentially for us, the issues were indentured slaves, boarding schools, and the massacres. And so one of those things happened in your family or you wouldn't act like this. Because there was just we had thousands of years of time here where we didn't do that sort of thing.
The boarding schools and massacres, obviously, I think most people probably know about, but you mentioned indentured servitude. Do you mind describing what that was about? I mean, I know what it means, I just don't know what it means in your context.
And the communities who decided they needed a workforce and they didn't have, they needed a source of slaves. And so they captured Native people and enslaved them through the court system, interestingly enough, and many of them were children because it's easier to control children than grown-ups. And then eventually they would grow up having been not parented and run away and come home. And with them came some bad habits.
Are you referring to was it in 1850, the Act for the Protection of California Indians?
It was just a slavery program.
Yeah. How long did
and I
that
think part of the problem,
last?
once I was talking to a group of social workers, Yurok social workers, and they were talking about parenting practices. And I was saying, you need to figure out which of your parents that you're talking about had these issues. I said, because, we're all Yurok women in here, and just explain to me exactly how somebody's going to come into your house and steal your children over your dead body. I know that as well as I'm sitting here. So some of these kids got to see their mothers killed also. Because it's only one way that's going to happen. I know us well enough to know that. And they went, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I never want to make assumptions about, the health or conditions of any particular tribe. Do you mind describing what sort of impact all of these different historical traumas have had on the Yurok people?
I think many of our present day poverty issues and poverty itself, which we never had, have led to and came from the invasion and the aftermath of that. And we survived, we're the largest surviving tribe in the state, and we survived because we ran and hid. Well, that's really a hard way to conduct yourself, and that the impact of all of that has trickled down to us, essentially. And it's caused serious disruption in the families. And at this point, I'm not faulting that as a defense mechanism, but we need to stop doing that. We need to come back out. And my basic premise at this point is that the people who came here did not know how to act here. And they have, in a couple of 100 years, a relatively short time, pretty darn near wrecked the joint. And we need to come back out and help them understand how you act here. And if we don't do that, running and hiding won't save us or them this time, because there's no place left.
Do you feel that the non-native population in Humboldt County is eager or willing to be educated about this, your way of life?
I think that, you look at that and you go, I'm responsible for me and for us, and I'll do what is right. And some of them will also. Is that going to be enough? I don't know. I'm a human. I'm not a god. I don't know what they're going to do. But I know what I'm supposed to do, and that's what I'll do.
Do you see a shift in the population, the non-native population, that some people are finally more willing to listen
I think,
and hear?
And part of it is, we didn't tell them either, and we knew, and so we bear some responsibility for that, so we need to get out and we need to be part of the general public at this point and help make policy and work with them,
Well, obviously, you've done a lot of work to reform the judicial system, the justice system in your tribe. I'm very interested in kind of learning about how you went about doing the research that was, I assume, required to learn about the traditional ways of adjudication, I guess, within your tribe. If you wouldn't mind describing that process and how that went.
I didn't do a lot of research. I'm in community. I go to things. I understand that. I've been corrected by elders. I get how to do that. And instead of looking at the system I learned in law school, I looked at that and went, this is a better way to do it, and that's how we set up our programs. And I don't think you can consequence people into better behavior. I really believe for the most part, they don't know how to do it. And so the best thing to do is walk with them, be with them, help them through that until they have it figured out. Sometimes I would, like our wellness cases can last for a year or 2 years, and then they can come back later and say, I need help with this. It's being a human being is a lot harder than it looks at first, whatever, and there's so many things that come up, and you have to, that's the advantage of living in community, is that you can get that help. Or if I need help, I can ask for help, or, just the behavior. I think now one of the things I'm looking at that I want to research, I was just answering an email from somebody before I got on this, is I really want to look at the language and the stories that are related to justice concepts and translate those as closely as you can into English and start developing practices from those concepts. And that's the problem, is that the language English isn't really good for what we do. It doesn't have a lot of concepts that we have. So you just have to observe and then try to go, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to do it.
I'm curious about the wellness court, and I wonder if you could talk us through, one, when you started that. Is that I've never heard of this before. Is this something you innovated, or did you borrow it from someone else? And then could you walk us through what would be the experience of somebody who comes through the wellness court? And
I think that the dominant culture calls them collaboration courts. We call them wellness courts because we're looking at a certain aspect of people's behavior. And, we try to meet the person where they are and go, look, you have a choice here. They want to put you in jail for this. We would rather you come home and work with us, and I'll assign somebody to help you. What do you want out of your family? What do you want for yourself? Did you finish high school? Do you need to finish high school? What do you need? Do you need help applying for a job? Do you need a ride? Do you need, it's all the things that we used to be able to do in community. And so we'll just provide that extra person to help you get grounded and to put all that together. And so each person is interviewed and offered a choice. You can stay in the state system, or you can come with us. We'll talk to them about it. Or sometimes they just come and say, can you help us? Because my brother was in here and it really helped him. Can I come too? Sure, you can come if you like. And we do dependency, like families who have lost their children. We help them work through that system. And how do you learn how to do that? How do you learn to parent? How do you pick up that skill set? And often it's, we've had people who started out life by the time they were 9 in front of a court, and by the time they're mid-20s going down for their third strike. And you can't do that in a year. You can't get them to, so you have to stay with them for a few years. And there'll be incidences where they go, and they do something and you go, what are you thinking of? I had one young man, and this young man was going down for his third strike. And so I said to a judge, in a small county, this judge had been consequencing this kid for God knows how many years, and none of it had worked. So I said, just let me have him for a year or two and see if I can, save us all the grief. And so he did. And, every little thing, we were at a meeting, and it was a community meeting on fishing, and he was furious. And he got up and he started ranting, and I walked over to him, and all the officers started converging on us because I grabbed him by the front of his shirt and drug him out of the meeting. And I said, I have told you 1,000 times, you are too big to rant and rave like that. You've scared every white person within 500 miles of here. How do you think this is going to end? And I was just tongue lashing him, and these cops are like, oh my God. He said, I'm sorry, Judge Abby. I said, you're going to be sorry if I ever catch you doing this again. I said, you're not even half close to sorry. I said, your two choices are you can come back in there and stand next to me, or you can go home. I'll come with you. I'll come with you. Okay. But I said, you can't, this isn't a prison yard. You can't act like that. This is not how you do it. And so it's just that kind of hands-on.
Do you have social workers that you assign to people in your wellness court?
We have some social workers, but we have advocates. And I said, as an advocate, most of the discipline and that kind of stuff came from aunties and grandmas, aunties, uncles, and grandmas and grandpas, not parents. So I said, just default into that because we all know how to act that out. And, that's what you do.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. I mean, okay, when a typical judge would just sit up there and, keep a kind of maybe an aloof air about them, and maybe have the people like their bailiff or something deal with those kinds of outbursts. But dealing with them like an auntie or a grandma, I would assume, triggers in him even just that reverence perhaps for the elders.
Yeah, they're more afraid of the tongue lashing from me than they are the bailiff. So they just automatically respond to it. And that's the end of that. I mean, when I devised the courtroom, we don't have a bench. We have tables, we all sit around. They're engraved with the river. They have river rocks on them. I don't wear a robe. I mean, and they see me everywhere because I'm in community with them. And I had these two guys, we brought them in because they were having a fist fight on the river over a fishing pole. And so I issued restraining orders, and they came in, and I was like, I'm furious at both of you. I said, by my count, you guys have been fishing next to each other for 30 years, and I have to issue restraining orders because you can't use your heads, And so I'm going down that road. I said, I happen to have a cultural leader here who you should have gone to and figured out what to do without coming in here. But you decided not to. Instead, be fools, and I have to issue restraining orders so you knuckleheads don't kill each other, which I can't fix. I said, now here's your choice. You can go with Ron, or you can stay in here with me. Oh, okay, we'll go with Ron. I said, okay, I'm going to sit in my office, and when you guys are done, come and knock on the door. I said, and just hold the thought that if you don't resolve it, you're going to come back in here and face one mad old Yurok woman. So think about that very carefully. So about an hour and a half later, they're knocking on the door and they're laughing and talking. And I walk out. I said, don't worry, Judge. It's okay. Now everything's okay. I said, fine. We go back on the record. I dissolve the restraining orders. And I said, the only order is that you guys go home, tell your sons and your nephews, because I don't want to see anybody in here again from either of your families. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. Yes, Judge. Yes, Judge. That was it.
You mentioned that when you work with state legal authorities and you give offenders, if that's the word you want to use, a choice, do you want to stay in the state system or do you want to come to my court? Do most people say, I want to come to your court?
Yeah. And I let them know. I said, I won't lie for you and I won't cover up for you. You'll do as we say, or I'm going to throw you back under the bus because, you did this, I didn't. I've talked them into letting you give this a try, but if you don't make it, I'm not covering for you and I won't cover for you because I just don't. And I don't lie. And they can rely on that too. The judges can because they're used to me at this point.
How long?
And I practiced in their courts for years too, so it's not like I'm an unknown.
Mm-hmm. I wondered how long your wellness court has been going on.
At least the last decade, and we expand calendars, like we added veterans. We're getting a veterans person that will concentrate just on veterans and youth, and we add programs to it all the time.
Has anything changed from when you started work with the Yurok tribe and started implementing this your more traditional justice system? Has anything changed from that when you first started to now?
Well, I think as we grow, as we get more success, we have more people in the community helping too, who will go, oh, let them come in and work here with me, or let them do this, or, and there's more of that going on. And we get a lot more assistance in community from people too. And part of the wellness court is you have to give back. So we assign projects for them. It's like what you would be akin to community service, and the first option in all of our quasi-criminal behavior is community service, because I'd rather have them go out in community and do something, and people go, oh, look what Margaret did. She did this, instead of look what Margaret did and she was in trouble now,
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder if some people would, listening to this, may wonder what happens if somebody commits a really serious crime like murder or something like that. Do you have prisons there or jails there?
We don't, because it's a public law 280 state, and so the state has concurrent jurisdiction, although we're working to take some more jurisdiction back. When people are in jail for serious crimes, we have a reentry program that is fairly sophisticated, and we work with a reentry approach with them. We have homes for them when they come out. I like to have it pretty managed, because let's just say it doesn't help your social skills any. So,
Have you consulted with, or have other tribes come to you to establish similar courts in their own nation?
lots of people come and visit, not so much during the pandemic, but yesterday I was just talking to somebody from Maine who had wanted to come, and we let them appear virtually so they could watch the calendars. And now they want to come out because they feel like they could travel a little more now. And a lot of people from Alaska have come down, and, different things like that.
Mm. That's great. What about non-native courts? Have you had anybody wanting to implement this within their own courts?
Well, we have joint jurisdiction courts, and we're in 2 counties, and we have family wellness court in both of them. And our people are given the option to go into the family wellness court in the state system. And in that joint jurisdiction court, one of the Yurok judges will sit with the state court judge. And the huge difference is that in those courts, they meet every 2 weeks as opposed to every 6 months or whatever. We have found that you've got to have a lot more contact than the state system gives you. It just doesn't work that way. If somebody has an issue, waiting 6 months is not really a good idea. Or if they don't do this, or they, need you assigned to this program, and then you realize if they could get a job, it would be much better, and maybe better switch the programming so they can work. There's all sorts of things that don't fit. You think they fit in the moment, and then 10 minutes later they don't fit at all.
Can you describe how you handle things like custody battles?
Well, essentially, they come in, and we work out they have to mediate it. What we stress over and over is, you guys made the decision to parent. We didn't. We'll help you figure out how to do it, but you have to do it. You have to participate. We have also the only child support, tribally recognized and state recognized child support court. So we transfer those cases in. And I said, when I set it up, I will go through the extra work of setting up an in-kind system. And that means if the 2 parents decide they'd rather, like fish or give wood or do whatever, get a deer, we will value that as child support if you both agree. And oftentimes you do that. Sometimes it's babysitting, because sometimes the parents don't get along, but the grandparents do. And so we'll go, okay, well, if X's parents babysit, that's going to count for X's child support. Okay, because I really need the babysitter so I can go to work. And so we'll do all of that kind of thing. Now, domestic violence is different, because you have to have that separation, but we involve the families in making sure and trying to help there be contact. in our domestic violence program, I think we've had very few people not be able to maintain their behavior after the program. But we've worked really hard on them, and that, our curriculum was rewritten by Chris Peters because I wanted it to be culturally sound. So
maybe we could start to talk about kind of what impact you've seen in these restorative justice models within your tribe. Things like has it reduced recidivism? How effective has it been, essentially?
it is very effective. I think what we need more is more long-term check-ins that we've found, like after 3, 4, 5 years, when somebody's been out, we need more contact. And we had that built in because we would have wellness gatherings and all the graduates would come, but we haven't had that for 3 years. And I think that's not been good. And we were just talking the other day, we're going to have our first wellness gathering, sort of post whatever, next month, and start doing that again so people could come back together. And those are usually big meals and discussions and laughing. And you bring your families, to it too. It isn't just, okay, well, Kevin graduated, so he comes. His whole family does. His, mom and dad, his grandma, whoever wants to come gets to come. And then we have a program, and that really helps because it reminds people of why. And even small things like at the wellness gatherings, we would have raffles. People love raffles, But our raffle was, okay, you pull a ticket. Kevin got the winning ticket. He gets to pick a prize to give to somebody, not to keep for himself, but to give to somebody. And people are thrilled with that, to be able to pick something out and give it to somebody. Because we have nice prizes that, people in our community would really like, whether it's lanterns or stoves or sleeping bags or whatever. And just being able to have a really, what people would think, expensive gift that they can give to whoever they want. And they'll run over and give it to people. And it's just like so exciting, to be the winner. But it's just reinforcing different things, because most raffles, you get the prize and you take off with it instead of you get the prize and you get to give it to somebody. That just changes the whole thing.
Absolutely. Sort of like our concept of giveaways. I'm sure you probably have similar
Exactly.
things. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
You mentioned earlier, Judge Abby, that it's hard to translate some of the concepts from Yurok to English. And I wondered if there's any close approximation in the English language to what you're doing. I mean, I've heard your work referred to as restorative justice. Is that the word you'd use in English?
I don't do it. I just say it's the Yurok way. I don't really use that word. I don't have anything against it, but it's not a word we would have used. We have stories, we do different things, We have a cultural officer in the court, a full-time person, and one of the gifts that we give the community is we have a storyteller and his son goes to an elementary school, tells the story. They partner with a theater group. They turn it into a puppet show. And at the end of the puppet show, we gift the school with a dinner for all the kids' parents and whoever came to the puppet show. But the story is, we pick out a story, and the story that they tell is Little Bird. And Little Bird has broken Little Bird's wing and can't fly with his family like he's supposed to. And so he has to ask for help so he can stay the winter. And so it's the whole line of the story. The storyline is, how do you ask for help? What do you do when you don't get the help? And so it's a lesson. It's always, all of our stories have a lesson, and so that's the gift we give to the community, because we're trying to do more of that, as I mentioned in the beginning, outreach, and that's a gift that we give to the community, because people have to ask for help when you need it, and it's hard when you ask for help and nobody helps, and how do you manage that, and how do you ask for help? Because part of the story is Little Bird has to offer a song first, and then what happens.
Great. How has the outside world sort of received this model? What do you hear from judges, I guess, and things like that from outside your tribe?
I think more and more people are looking at it. We earlier this week we did a program with the federal bench here in the district about domestic violence and about how to work with that, as an issue, and how our approach in our battery intervention program, and why it's important, because just punishing people hasn't really done anything for them or anybody else, frankly. And it didn't take me very long to figure out just protecting the victim wasn't enough, because then my problem just moved 3 houses down, instead of whatever.
Have you dealt with sexual violence?
Not a lot, because those are the crimes that get into state. In a public law 280, they go there, and so what we're trying to do is figure out, we've dealt a lot with missing and murdered, and we have a very well-developed project on that. We did a lot of research. We just did our 3rd major paper on it, and we've raised a significant amount of funds to set up a prosecutorial arm, and part of what they're going to do, and they've raised the money for an investigator, because I need somebody to look at the cold cases and to develop protocols for us. We just got a feather alert passed in the state, which will be an alert system for when natives go missing. So we're doing a lot of that stuff that we never used to do, this sort of reaching out. And one of the projects on our list is a constant source of, I don't know what to me, that there is no alert system for when foster children do not come home. And I said that is the fault of every grown-up in this world, because who allows any child to go unnoticed when they're missing? That is not okay. Because Amber Alert and all those other alerts do not cover foster kids. And so that we're getting ready to, with some allies, bring before our legislature. And I said, that's not the thing where you go, okay, well, I want an alert system for Yurok kids. I want an alert system for children who are in foster care who do not come home, period. And it's not okay that they've been ignored like this, in my opinion. So those are the kinds of things we're doing more of. And a lot of people go, and even I've had senior people in the Justice Department go, what, there's no alert system? And I'm like, you guys are in charge. You don't even know what you have, But I'm trying to work on my manners, so I don't really say that, but I just think it. So things like that, where we're trying to widen our scopes. And if we get protocols for missing and murdered, then, to allow the other tribes to use them is really important to me. And like I said, with the foster kids, I would never just go, I want a system for our kids. I mean, I'll develop a protocol internally once we have the alert system and share the protocol. But the alert has to come from the state, because most of them are in state homes.
Is California the first state who's passed a feather alert?
No, I think, didn't Washington have one? I'm trying to think. Because we patterned it after that. Because I wanted that, but I think we're set up to do that. We're doing a lot of different things like that we didn't do initially, trying to expand the systems, and where they can overlap into other people's children, like the foster care thing.
Have you had other tribes reach out to you wanting to replicate what you're doing there within their nations?
We generally have a lot of people making inquiries, and before the epidemic, people would come by a lot, or want to visit for a week, and we always are welcoming them.
That's so terrific. I was just looking at feather alerts because I was curious about other states, but I mostly found what came up was about what you all are doing in California.
Yeah, It's on the governor's desk now, and I'm pretty certain he's going to sign it.
That reminds me, Judge Abby, about I'm aware that Governor Newsom has established I can't remember the exact name, but like a Truth and Healing Commission.
Right.
Have you been involved with that at all?
They're going to have one of their first public hearings over in San Francisco in a couple of weeks, and I've been asked to appear at that, and I'll do that. And I talk with them a lot. Christina Snyder runs that office, and her assistants, Loretta Miranda, and I know both of them. So,
what do you hope will come out of that?
well, I think people have to develop an approach to respond to what has happened, besides ignore it. So that's what you're initially looking at, and how do you heal? Because at one point, people were talking about reconciliation, and I'm like, you can't reconcile genocide, and nor should you try. You can try to heal from it, but nothing is going to make genocide right. So I don't like the concept of reconciliation. It's just a bad word for it. But you have to try to heal, and so then how do you do that? And what steps can you take? And what land do you have control over that maybe you shouldn't have? Taking it back from private parties is a different thing, but I think people have to acknowledge how they got it or where it came from. And I think it's a conversation. It isn't what Abby thinks should happen or whatever. I think you have to there were a lot of tribes that were decimated, and they have to be involved too. And we have something between 60 and 80 tribes that are unrecognized in this state that are seeking recognition. And most of the reason they're unrecognized is because they were so decimated during the process.
I was fascinated to hear that the Yurok did not regain federal recognition until 1993.
Yeah.
You mentioned that. Did they have federal recognition and lose it during the termination era, or you just didn't get federal recognition until?
No, they tried to put everybody on HUPA. That's what happened.
I imagine that was a huge, long legal battle to get recognition. I can't imagine.
Yeah, and the fishing wars came after that. It's just been a long, involved mud wrestling contest.
Do you ever think there'll come a day when this sort of model, which I guess in this context I'll call restorative justice, could ever be implemented in the United States courts, state courts, county courts?
I don't know. We talk a lot about it, and how do you scale it for a urban area, and how do you do, those kinds of things. And, I think you have to go back to some of the founding principles. And we were talking about, in my opinion, like the whole melting pot was a drastic, ugly error of judgment. You cannot check your culture at the door and then go and say, what I'm going to do is be this now. Because a lot of people came from cultures that would never have tolerated this sort of behavior. This like, oh, you have it? Let me just take Kevin's, then I don't have to worry about it. Wait a minute. That's not okay. And many, many cultures would not have put up with that. That's a pretty late introduction in terms of human behavior. So I think that people have to start remembering where they came from. It isn't just us, it's them too. And it just even like we took some Irish, I was going to say kids, not kids, men into our domestic violence program. And we made them do the same thing. Go back and ask. And I said, because the truth of the matter is, you guys are probably Celts. You're tribal people. Where did boarding schools come from? They came from when the Brits tried to smash the Celts. And then they imported them to smash us. And many, many people don't realize that. And I said, you're more like us than you are like them. Why do you think so many of you ran to the reservations? Because we were like-minded. And a lot of Irish people in this country don't know that. They don't know the biggest monument to Native Americans is in the middle of Ireland, for God's sakes. And those kind, that has to be out there.
Can you go further about what that monument is for our listeners?
It was because of the famine, and the Choctaws sent money to them during the famine. They collected all their white people money and sent it over to them. It wasn't a great amount of money, but it was significant in terms of the time. And it came from that, essentially. And they always had exchanges of ambassadors since then.
Well, I think we're kind of running out of questions here, Abby. Is there anything we haven't asked about that you might want to talk about?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Do you have any sort of future plans for the court system there that you might want to mention? Or
We're trying to, like I said, do some research in language and get those concepts over so we can do it. I want to do more research on indentured slaves. I'd like to expand, some of our options, our housing options and intern options and those kinds of things so that people can come and learn and help, and get more of our kids through school, and then try to get them parts of the school that we don't like out of them when they come home, and that kind of stuff. So there's always something to do. And the dams are coming down hopefully soon, and we're hoping the river will rebound with that. So there's lots to look forward to. And with the end of the pandemic, there's been more dances this summer, so that's good. And hopefully, next year they'll be back.
It was wonderful to be out in your area of the world, and we got a lot of little things, and it does seem like a lot of amazing things are happening there, and in the Indian country in general, with visionary people like you who are melding tradition with modern systems. So it's really a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Well, I hope you both have a good day.
Judge Abby Abinanti has transformed the Yurok judicial system through the incorporation of Native practices in her courtroom. Judge Abby has created innovative alternatives to incarceration that have proven to be more effective in rehabilitating offenders and in healing communities.
Thank you for joining us on Reconciliation Rising, a project dedicated to Natives and non-Natives confronting our past and reimagining our future. If you'd like to learn more about our project, please check out our website at www.reconciliationrising.org.